Step into the edge of evolution as we explore the shifting thoughts, beliefs, and actions that are shaping our tomorrow. Our mission is to empower and engage you in creating a new future because your impact matters. Our podcast, The Broader Edge, airs live on alternate Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, hosted by Sheila Cash, Elizabeth Williams, Teri Angel, and me, Mira Rubin. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad to have you here. And ladies, it's great to be back with you.
Great to be with
Thank
you.
It
Yeah.
sure is.
It's always like a reunion, even though we only have like a week in between or less than that. It's wonderful to be together. So tonight's topic is moving from human doing to human being, and I we rotate our options as to who gets to pick our topic, and I chose this topic because I have been looking at the world and what might be a shift that would transform the ills of the world, so to speak. And as I looked deeply at this, I realized how as as a culture in the United States and probably most cultures, we've actually commodified life. Like we evaluate the value of people based on their income, based on how many things they have, based on what they've accomplished in the world. And I the moving from human doing to human being is really a shift of focus from life as product to life as process. And I have been playing with this idea for a while and I've been really engaged with it. And I love speaking with you ladies about all these wonderful thoughts. And I figured if we could engage together, it could be a really stimulating and hopefully very enlightening conversation. So there's our topic. Who wants to jump in? Oh, come on.
Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing what your reflections, especially Mira, are because you have been immersed in this topic. I'm wondering about equitability, and you had brought that up on the post of the promotion of this topic. And, there seems to be a connection between equitability moving forward in our species and being able to just be, right? Because obviously there's so many on our planet that must be productive. And that was another concept that you brought up around this topic. So, we are needing to be productive, but if the world were more equitable, then we could all just be more and do less.
So that's the assumption, is that if we are human beings, that we wouldn't do as much.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding that not to be true. So this is an experiment that I'm having with my coaching clients and with myself. And what the shift is that the results that we produce in the world are a byproduct rather than the goal. And so the way that we operate currently is we do to get a result. So I'm going to write a book so that I can say I wrote a book, right? Or I'll be published, or I'm going to run a marathon so that I can run the marathon, so that I can say I ran the marathon, rather than I'm running because I enjoy running. I'm writing because I enjoy writing. And it's the process of doing the thing that I'm passionate about that is actually engaging me in the act of living, instead of forestalling the act of living with the end goal, which often doesn't even offer satisfaction. because it's from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And as human doings, we're all about, um, for instance, in sales, you're only as good as your next sale. You know, you're only as good as your next accomplishment. And the thing that advised me around this is the thought that unless we do something radical on the planet, we have about 10 years before we have irreversible consequences of climate change. And what we need to do is to connect to life. And if we connect to life as something of value in and of itself, that will enable us to value one another and to value our planet in a way that we are currently not doing. We're all about more, better, best, bigger, faster, um, accomplishment, goals, production, right? And we are so oriented to that that this association of self-worth to productivity is so deeply entrenched that people just their minds are blown when you say, okay, what if you do nothing? What if you don't set goals? What if you instead be? What if you be connected to the inspiration that moves you? And then what occurs from that? And what I've seen, which is remarkable and so completely counterintuitive, is that people are producing phenomenal results. But it's not because they're counting the results, they're being in the process rather than the product. And the results are feedback. So if we allow our results to be feedback, then it shifts the whole paradigm of success and failure, right? Because it's just feedback and we're in a process. So what do you think?
I would add that I think the other really critical piece of human doing is not just the need to achieve, but very often it's the need to avoid facing the truth of our challenges, our self, our wounds, our shadow, whatever. So we get on the treadmill of productivity so that we don't have the time to listen to the emotions that are, tapping at our heart. So that is, I think that in combination with those two things together, the avoidance of the deep emotions and the truths within us and this desire to achieve is a toxic combination. And so I would simply say, add that in addition to doing more being, is allowing yourself to get more in touch with yourself and with your authentic self. And then, as you said, what comes from that is even deeper and richer and more in truth with who you are.
Exactly. Brilliant, brilliant insight. Thank you for articulating that. Exactly. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
I did some writing just recently, and it was kind of channeled through because I know it wasn't me, but part of what came out in that was talking to other people, and it's like I don't want to know what you do for a living. I want to know what you live for.
Oh, that's
So
beautiful.
looking at who you are, not what you do, Mira, just exactly what you're bringing out for us. And I think a lot of times we identify ourselves with what we do instead of this is who I am, this is who I really am. And the more we can get in touch with that, we're going to move into living our passion and letting our passion be what motivates us and what guides us going forward. And those goals can be out there of what we want to achieve, but it's going to be more along our alignment with who we are and what we're here for in this lifetime. I certainly don't think I'm here to sit at a desk 8 hours a day and go home and sleep. There's so much more to it, to this life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sheila.
Yeah, so when I thought about my own life in being and in doing, it struck me that when we are allowed to be, there's so much creativity that is inspired. There's so much creativity that rises up. such as when people are on retreats, especially extended retreats or for a few weeks. Or, we often hear about people who take time out, for 6 months to write. I took time away from my practice to write, but in the meantime, I was also selling a house, and my mother had come very sick, and I was taking care of her and so forth. But being really inspires that creativity to rise up. But when your doing is already creative and inspired, then being and doing become the same thing. So, I so enjoy my doing because it's all authentic. And it serves as my hobby time, my reflection time, and even my fun and my relationships, because I have been being and doing for a very long time now. The community, I've built the community around me that, are sort of in a similar place in life, and my closer relationships. So I certainly know many people whose being and whose doing are separated. And this just brings me a lot of gratitude, the realization that, that my being and my doing are so closely aligned. But I know that a wider part of the topic that you're bringing up today is really about the world economy, the world's sustainability. And so I'm looking forward to us talking about that too.
Well, I love that you made the distinction about loving what you do. The thing is that being a human being rather than a human doing doesn't mean not doing. And it doesn't mean doing less. What it means is being present. It's the whole thing, the Zen thing, chop wood, carry water. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It may be that you're doing the same thing, but the driver is different. If you're present to your life, if you're present to the activity that you're doing, then you're being a human being rather than a doing. And Teri, I think you said so many of us identify with what we do. Well, I think that all of us identify with what we do to a certain degree. Like when somebody says, who are you? Well, I'm a teacher, or I'm a healer, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. And that's the doingness, because how else do we say who we are? I'm light. Somebody's going to say, okay, you be light. Good. Glad to hear that. Right. But I think that when we look at this, Sheila, as you were saying, in a grander scale, one of the things that came up through COVID was the idea of essential workers. And I found it horrifyingly ironic that our essential workers were predominantly the people that get paid the least in our society.
Mm.
And we have commodified life. Look at how we treat the animals that we raise for food. Look at how we treat people who are marginalized. Look at how our services and our structures are here to enrich people and companies that are destroying the planet. Why? Why can they do that? Because it's okay to create pollution and to devastate communities with toxic waste as long as you're making money. And when that money is the primary primary importance, and when accumulation is of the highest importance, then we have allowed the justification of that because we've commodified everything. And it's because also it's coming from more, better, best. so, and the doingness, valuing another big skyscraper, but valuing having more clothing, valuing having a better car, etc. And so I believe that this shift to living and valuing life for life itself, not based on this person's worth more than that person because they produce this. We're all human beings on the planet. And the question that it brings up is, well, if we're all human beings on the planet, what would it look like if we lived that way? That all life is valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I think the deeper question is, if we're not human beings, but spiritual beings having a human experience, that shifts everything, right? We're not human beings, we're being human. We're in fact spiritual beings. So now if we are all spiritual beings and we see each other that way, and we see our planet, we see Mother Earth that way as a spiritual being, then a lot of what you're talking about, the degradation, would not happen. It could not happen because we would not treat each other and our planet that way.
Yeah. Well, and for people who can't wrap their head around that, at least to value life.
Yeah.
As a value in and of itself. Right? And so I think it's such a rich topic, and it's so interesting to me to see how threatening it is, how disruptive it is to people to be thinking, well, what does it mean to be a human being? What does it mean to just be? When I identify myself, well, what we always say, well, what did you do today? Right? What did you do?
Or we'll ask, how are you doing? When we might want to ask, how are you being? Right?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, imagine, the responses that you might get.
That,
or for yourself to ask yourself that question, how are you being today?
I love it. I love it. And one of the distinctions that we made in this context was a shift from oh boy, now I'm not remembering. It was a shift to intention from outcome. So to go into something with a clear intentionality, for instance, somebody who is dating, this is actual conversation, somebody who is on a dating app and had an opportunity to connect with somebody else through this app, and they want to find their life's partner, and that's an outcome. That's what it is. Shift
Yes.
from outcome to intention. And I said, okay, so what's going to be your intention? And they said, the intention is to connect. And I said, well, if the intention is to connect, you don't have to worry about if this is your person or not. You get to connect. And then if it's your person, great. If it's not your person, great. You get to connect. And that's the beingness of it. And so to move from outcome to intentionality, to move from life as product to life as process. And I just imagine that could change everything.
It's really, it is up to us to bring this to the wider economy. Us meaning not just the four of us, but all of us as beers. Because what we, how we are is what drives business. And that's gotten very confused along the way. Business is not all that immersed in consciousness. They are more immersed in the outcome, but they want the outcome that's going to work, that is going to work best for them. I think you're actually, and what you're alluding to is that there would be much more consciousness and much more beingness within the companies. But I feel that it's in terms of it's evolving into that, it would be coming from the grassroots level.
It could. It could. This led into another conversation actually about prison reform, of all things, right? And when we talked, we were playing with the idea of what it would look like if part of the requirement for the wardens and the guards and such were to do a mindfulness practice. And actually it started out with thinking about making mindfulness practice available for the prisoners, and then we thought, well, what about for the people running the prisons? And then we thought, what about for the police forces?
Yeah.
Doing a mindfulness practice to create more beingness instead of this doingness. So I kind of see this idea as something that allows us to be more connected to our oneness, right? As we're being more present, you can't not be more connected, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's like all of these career choices that people make, there had to be a passion there somewhere for going that direction, like with the police officer or corrections officer, whatever it might be. So it's getting back to that passion, because as you get into the career, then you get into the routine and doing the day-to-day doing, and you forget what your passion was. So doing the mindfulness, bringing that back to really see, okay, why am I doing this? What is my passion for this? And how can I bring that about to make what I do throughout the day more comfortable for me as I go through that day? As I spend my 8 hours doing whatever the job is, why am I doing this? And keep that in the forefront, using our passion to drive that cohesion with everyone, seeing everyone as the same, as equal. And that comes through our passion.
When you talk about essential workers, I feel like we need to move to a place where everyone is an essential worker, because everyone is doing essentially what they're meant to do from their essence.
Oh, I
right?
love that.
Everyone's at whatever everyone is doing on the planet comes from their essence. We're all essential. And that would naturally lead to more passion, more fulfillment,
more joy.
More joy. Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
I
think that there are, go ahead, Sheila.
Oh, I was saying, as you're talking about it, being with each other, brings a synergy of beingness, which to me speaks to authenticity. It seems like so many topics come down to authenticity, which is passion, and which is where we are ultimately evolving to. I mean, if we look at the trajectory of where we have come from, we are kind of really slowly evolving that way, right? Because there's so many more people being able to be now than ever before, at least for many centuries, or millennia. But the idea is how, is to bring awareness to it, to bring even more consciousness to it, so that we can, we can be in being with each other right now.
I think to a large degree, it's a cultural shift of values that's required, and a kind of a global shift of values, because there are lots of people that are in jobs that they hate, and there are lots of people who pursued careers for the money. And there are lots of businesses that do business because they can make a killing doing it, money wise. And the value, the primary value, and that's where this really comes from, the primary value that I was able to identify as a culture that we revere, and not us per se here, but as a culture is money. And like on a very, very, very pervasive, deep level. And I was looking at, well, what could possibly shift that? And because we, money makes the world go round. We all know this, right? Whether it's true or not, it's kind of where we come from, and as a culture. And we have to do this because I have to make money, and I have to pay my bills, and I have to do all these things, that it kind of brings us into sort of a slavery of sorts, for all of us, when the quality of our lives is dictated by the amount of money that we have or don't have in some capacity. So it's partly the reason that money is so important is because we are so consumer oriented, because we value things more than we value life and the experience of living. And we keep thinking that more things are going to make life better, but it doesn't work that way.
Because that's what the advertisers have told us, right? I mean, we have been brainwashed to believe that if we don't have something that we see on TV advertised, then we're not whole. And, it takes me back. There is a shift happening. Sheila, you were alluding to this, and we know there is a shift happening. 30 or so years ago, when I was an undergrad, literally my first finance class. I tell this story because I still remember it exactly, but my first finance class in undergrad, and the professor got up in front of 1,000 students in the lecture hall and said, the number one purpose in business is to increase shareholder value. I was 18 years old, and I sat there thinking, what? I even then, having no idea, but I could tell in my gut there had to be something more to business. And kind of thinking, am I in the wrong place? But I didn't think much more about it. I finished my degree. I went on to get an MBA in finance and was in the business world. Things have shifted significantly. Social enterprises are a real and growing thing, where it is not all about profit. It is about profit and purpose, or about profit, planet, and people. And we have numerous organizations recognizing now the value of that, and the stock market is bearing that out. Companies that are focused on more than profit are actually doing better, particularly in downturns, and research is proving that. So that's why impact investing has become so prominent. So we are headed in the right direction. We as consumers do need to do what we can to continue to put the pressure on businesses to say, we will purchase from organizations that are focused on profit and purpose, and not the others. And millennials are really doing their part because they're much more vocal about that. So we're headed in the right direction. We have to keep the momentum going.
We have to accelerate it.
And we have to really be mindful and aware of the manufactured needs, that business creates to tell us what we need. And a lot of it is based around cosmetic, and sex, and so the more aware that we can be around what is it that we really need, and how much cosmetic do we really need, we're going to be the drivers of where it goes.
We really are.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like, choose what your priorities are. That's what it comes down to. Am I willing to buy into this and use your brain? It's like, oh, I don't know that I agree with, we have to have this. It's like hoarding. We have to have this. We have to get the newest, the latest, the greatest, but we really don't. And there's nobody standing up to all of this media push to buy all of that stuff. And this is where the grassroots, like you were saying, it's like, we are the ones that have to put that stop to it, to the endless. You have to have the best. You have to have the latest.
Yep.
We don't have to have the latest.
Well, look at the
So
fashion
we have to
industry.
set the priority.
I'm
The
sorry.
fashion industry. Yes. No, that's okay. Go ahead.
The fashion industry every season.
Yep.
You know, so the thing is that along with being educated by the advertising agencies and the big companies that we need their product, along with that, we have been taught that I lost my train of thought.
I'm sure it was brilliant.
trying to think
I can't
through
wait. I
was
can't
saying-
wait to come back.
there was a stall and my brain just went off, but I'll come back to it if you guys want to pick it up.
Well, the fashion industry, yeah, I mean, great point. And I remember this was another awareness I came to at some point, which is I can buy something I love this year, and next year it's out of style, and I still love it, and I have to buy it. The same thing happens. It drives me insane with technology. You know, that your phone that's working absolutely perfectly well somehow needs to be upgraded. But going back to fashion, what really gets me, because of the social impact space that I'm in, is labor practices that happened around fashion manufacturing in countries. And that's just another, you know, if we're focused on fast fashion, somebody's paying the price for that.
And we're paying the price environmentally. And I remembered what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Along with being educated to having to consume, the manufacturing processes have been designed for forced obsolescence. So things are made to break, things are made to have to be thrown away. And we have gotten into the fast, not just the fast culture mindset, fast food, fast fashion, you know, everything is throwaway. And I think we get to reevaluate, just like when we were talking about prejudice and racism, and we get to look deep inside to say, what are my unseen and invisible assumptions? What am I operating on automatically that I haven't even looked at?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want that new handbag. I want those new shoes. I want, you know, I want. But why? Because, like you said, Liz, we've been taught, we've been deliberately trained to consume.
You know, it even goes to the commercials about pharmaceuticals. You know, we've been taught that we're ill, that we are sick with, and if you didn't know you were, now you know that you have this disease and there's a drug that you can take. I mean, it's almost ludicrous that if you watch TV in the evening and you are advertised drugs, and we've allowed it to happen. I even drugs for your dog. You know, the other day I was watching a commercial about what could happen to your dog. Like, this is absolute insanity, and yet we all kind of, you know, we sit there and watch it go by, and, you know, fingers crossed that's not the disease I have this week. But
it is.
I had a neighbor, just what you're saying there, Liz, and it reminds me of a comment that a neighbor had made years ago, and she had a lab that was a sort of a, you know, a little bit of a mixed breed, and the lab's hair was long and it was wavy, but not like a lab. And some of the other neighbors at a backyard barbecue told her she could get the hair straightened on her dog.
Oh my God.
It's a dog. This is a dog that we're talking about. You know?
right, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, and I'll never forget that one. That was a good one.
I actually heard a very interesting thing from someone about the advertisements, the drug advertisements that are on the networks, and those advertisements are super highly produced. They're expensive ads that we see, right? But what I heard was that probably the motivation is not so much to sell the drugs as it is to get the networks dependent on the pharmaceutical company revenue, so that the pharmaceutical companies then have leverage to have their message promoted and to be able to squash messages that are contradictory to their platform.
Yeah.
Which is, again, This is a function of the doing, human doing, and 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 hoarding, right? Like more, better, best. That we can justify, or as a culture we accept, that these big corporations get to run our media outlets and get to dictate what we get to know, right? So we're in so many ways, this doingness is holding us hostage as sheeple, like sheep people following, following something that we're not even aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So the beingness brings us back to awareness, is like checking in, what's going on? What am I beyond these ideas of who I think I am? And it brings back to what you were saying, Liz, is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. But what if we connected more to that? What would the world look like, as you said?
Mm-hmm.
I certainly have noticed a trend in these last few months. I've been seeing, um, guides for sustainable living at home that looked very interesting, actually. And we saw a lot of people doing that in the 60s and the 70s. People getting back to gardening and away from the microwaves and the manufactured needs of, you must be able to have a baked potato in whatever minutes. I honestly, I do pride myself for being probably the only human being that doesn't use a microwave and never did. I still put a potato in the oven. I had learned about microwaves, decades back, and decided I didn't need to use it. And so I didn't, and I never have. People walk into my kitchen. I have one now. We just moved. We don't particularly use it. But they would say, "Where's your microwave?" And I thought, you just plan a little bit differently. You put a potato in the oven before you run your kids to the soccer field, and when you come back and it's done. But again, just kind of being aware of, what do we really need, and how, because need is in direct proportion to the beingness and the doingness. If we need everything right now, then we have to do something to make it happen.
Yeah, and what a great point, because we have become a society of wanting instant gratification. Everything is instant, and if it's not, then we move along to what can give us that satisfaction. So I think that's a huge part of this, becoming this person who lives our passion. And maybe our passion is to slow down and not go at that fast pace where everything just happens like that. It's like, wait a minute, let's enjoy each moment. Let's enjoy the ride. This is a journey. The destination is the journey. And the more we can go into that, then we don't need the microwave, that's going to give it to us in 5 seconds instead of, the time in the oven.
Yeah.
It's really, we've been conditioned that everything has to happen now, and it has to happen fast, and then we move along to the next thing that's happening fast. So I think it's looking at, how do we slow that train down? How do we start moving at a slower pace to really enjoy this ride, and not just let it go by in a blur? If you think about a passenger train, everything's just going by you in a blur, and you don't really enjoy the scenery. So I think it's time to really stop that and to look at, what is this life all about? And that's the spiritual aspect. Why am I here? And am I really enjoying this life that I'm living? And once we do that, I think our priorities start to shift, and we're going to go to those things that you're talking about, Mira, looking at what's important. And am I buying into this? Am I buying into all that stuff that the media is trying to sell me that I have to have? And we don't have to have it at all.
And the truth is that as we're more affluent than any time in human history, and we're more unhappy. And it's because we have attached value to external things. And
Conveniences were the original intention of conveniences was to give us more time. But it actually ended up giving us less time because the more time we had, the more we filled it with more stuff. So it was, it really evolved into the opposite of the original intention of tools and faster and bigger.
yeah, it's crazy. It's so interesting to me, the paradoxes that I'm seeing lately, like the paradox of by being present to beingness, like how am I in this moment? What makes me happy? What, how can I be present in whatever it is, chop wood, carry water, whatever it is, um, that actually results in more results, more creativity, more expression, more holistically oriented kinds of activities, and more people centered, like connection centered activities. It's really amazing because you wouldn't expect it. Like you would expect when you say be a being rather than a doing, that I would do nothing, but that's not really the way it seems to work at all.
Well, in fact, that's not what it's meant to be. I think there can be this assumption that, I'll become a spiritual being and I'll just I'll just meditate. When monks used to go off and then just meditate, and that really isn't what we're meant to be completely. We are meant to do something from that place of being, as we were talking about earlier on. So I think you're right, Mira. I mean, we naturally, I think when we fill up, we naturally then flow out. As we just fill ourselves up internally with beautiful, beautiful things, it naturally overflows in love out into the world. And so, it's just a byproduct.
So we want to stay busy, but at this point we're at a point in our evolution where we can choose more consciously. What is it that we really want? Because we could create better technology if that's what we want. That's what we could do with our reflective time, and that's what certain people would do, who are geared that way, and that is their authenticity and their passion. So it feels like it's really just more about mindfulness and making more conscious choices, whatever that is for you.
And I think, as a culture, we value being busy, like we value money. Like the busier I am, there's some kind of status attached to that.
Mhm.
I'm really busy, or that person's really lazy because they don't do anything.
Yeah.
And I think that those are really false metrics. Maybe somebody who doesn't do anything is doing less damage in the world than somebody who's, running around doing all kinds of stuff, So
Well, and as we lift our own vibration, we lift the vibration of the planet. So it may not look like we're doing anything when in fact we're having a significant impact that's perhaps not measurable. Maybe it is.
I think that's such an important point, because one of the things I've said is if you connect with yourself, your inner self, and you want, what you are about is going off into a forest and meditating,
Mhm.
that's going to improve the planet. Go for it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you worth less. Doesn't make you worth less, or make, let's say you have a drive to paint, but you can't paint, you won't let yourself paint because you can't make money painting. So, I mean, that's something that probably all of us have been confronted with. You can't make money doing that. Don't do that. Do this. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead, so follow what your heart is leading you to do. If we do that with, I mean, not obviously we all have things that we have obligations to do. And I'm not saying don't do that. But ultimately, maybe you want to reshift those obligations.
we all want to create, or we all have an inner creativity in some way, shape, or form, and tap into that and share that creativity, whether you make a dime doing it or not. It's a need, I think, that we have to express ourselves.
I agree. It's what feeds our spirit. How many people, I was one of the people that was living life like a zombie.
Mhm.
I mean, I was dead inside because I was in a job that I hated. And I didn't have, I didn't see a way out. And it was killing me, literally killing me. And so, choose life.
So what did you do, Mira?
Yeah, I was going to ask that as well.
I pretty much, I had something close to a breakdown. Then I went back to school, and I pursued computer animation and multimedia because it was creative and I always wanted to do art stuff. And I had gone to art school, but I couldn't make money as an artist. So, and so I went back to school, and from there I went and had a business doing computer training in graphics and web production. So that was one of my many incarnations, but yeah, so I created myself over again. I gave my permission, because what happened was I actually decided to commit suicide, is what happened. And I caught myself having made that decision.
Wow.
Like where I decided where I was going to do it, and I said, "Okay, time to get some help." And I went and I got some counseling, and because it was a life or death decision, because I really was done, I gave myself permission to do what I wanted to do.
Wow.
Awesome.
So don't let yourself get to that
Yes.
point.
No.
And
Right.
Wow. And there's many people that I know can relate to that story, Mira, because there's many zombies that are just walking dead through life and not enjoying the roses, smelling the roses and what their passion is. So I applaud you. Absolutely.
well, it was a choice of living or dying. Really, it was that extreme for me. And I just pray for anybody that's listening to us that you don't allow yourself to get to that point.
Yeah.
Give yourself your soul's calling. Give yourself what you came here for. Give yourself your passion. Give yourself
Yes.
your life.
Love yourself.
Great message.
Love yourself. It's okay to love you first.
It's essential.
Really love you first.
It's essential.
Mhm.
The oxygen mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how can we help each other on the biggest scale? How can we support those who really need to get out of their jobs and they don't have the resources? What can we do?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think we really do need systemic change. I don't have an answer to that, but what I can say is I know what it is to have to work for a living. I know what it is to be in jobs that I don't like or that I hate. What I can say is find something that gives you joy, and don't wait to do that. Like it can be walking outside in nature. It can be taking photographs. It could be singing. It could be drawing. It could be, I mean, I'm thinking of all creative things. It could be running a marathon, but find something that gives you satisfaction, even in the midst of some of other things that you're not happy with. And the more you cultivate your happiness, the more possibilities will open. And there's that sort of an alchemy that I've discovered is that when you take steps to nurture yourself and to create that joy and to create that fulfillment, that more comes with it.
So you
I
might-
agree.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you might not be able to leave that job just yet, but you can possibly get out of other toxic relationships or toxic situations and fill those in with things that bring joy. And then eventually you'll be able to move from that job. But it is baby steps, but as Mira said, do something that does bring you joy today.
Yeah, and along that line also, Liz, we make a choice every day of what our perspective is. So even if you're in that job that you can't stand, that just really, gets to you, you can change your mindset also and say, I get to go to work today because then I get to pay the bills. I get to have a roof over my head. So changing it from I have to go to this horrible job that I hate, change that talk. And the more you change that talk and you have another perspective and look at it with different eyes, it's not that the job changes, it's still that job, but you change. And then once you change, you can look at what your options are and things will start opening up because you're doing that, because you change that little bit of perspective about, you have a choice that you make. And we all have that every day. We're human, so we have free will to make our choices and make our decisions.
And along that same line, within that job that you hate, there may be things that you like.
Yeah.
And so if you can start to focus on the things that you like, that at least will make it less painful, potentially.
Right.
Yeah, when you start to believe that the circumstances that you're in are actually for your higher good, for your benefit, it may not look like that, but they do have that capacity, that ability. It does shift things. It doesn't mean you stay stuck, but when you realize that perhaps there's something in this that I need to learn, perhaps there's a lesson, and once I've learned that lesson, I can move on. Yeah, that shifts things as well.
And perceive of that lesson as a gift. So just imagine that whatever your circumstance, the thing to do is to ask, what's the gift here?
Yeah, I love that.
It could be the gift here is that now I know what I don't want.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's
Well,
really valuable to know what you don't want. And you just keep doing that, and eventually you're going to land in a really aligned place.
Exactly. I hate to be the taskmaster, ladies, but let's look at the time.
That's amazing. I get the time flies when we're together for me.
Yeah, me too.
Well, thank you to everybody who's tuning in, and we want to invite you to check out the other amazing programming on Enlightened World Network. We want to give our thanks to Ruth Anderson, who is the mastermind behind Enlightened World Network and all this great programming. We are here on Enlightened World Network on alternate Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. And do we know what our topic is for next time?
We do. So I believe it's July 16th. And I'll be hosting that one. We're going to talk about community. So, this has really given us, things have shifted from a community standpoint over the last few decades. And I think this shutdown, COVID, has really given us a chance to think about what community means to us. When we're in social isolation, what are we missing? And so as we come out of this, how can we be intentional about being in community with those that we love, and even perhaps being in community with those who are different from us and that we don't know well, to expand our understanding as we move forward. So that's where we're headed.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again for being here with us. And we hope to see you in a couple weeks.
Yay. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.